Good morning, guys. It's Thursday, May 7th. I want you guys to think about your lives for a minute. Think about electricity, the car, cell phones, video games, the beds you sleep in, the medicines we use when we get sick, tap water, plumbing. Any of these things traces its roots back to the Industrial Revolution. Now, the term revolution means change. And a lot of times we think of the American Revolution when we think of when that word is brought up in American history. But today there are 1% of Americans list their occupation as farmer. Back in the early 1800s, which is the time frame we're talking about right now, 90% of Americans, roughly speaking, were farmers. So that is definitely a change. Well, how did we get to this point? What happened? How did society progress or change is probably the better word, from one based on agriculture and farming to one based on mainly manufacturing. Well, the idea itself, the concept of the Industrial Revolution, was considered to be a stolen idea. It first developed in Europe, specifically in Great Britain. This gentleman here, Samuel Slater, took the concept and he brought it to the United States. Now, the concept of the Industrial Revolution is basically bringing many workers under one roof, using machines and eventually technology to bring about mass production. Okay. Now, the mass production, we mentioned electricity earlier. There is no electricity during this time frame. So the factories had to be powered, and they were by water. They built the factories along rivers, and they would channel the water over or under a water wheel, which through a system of pulleys, gears, and axles would power the machines in the mills or factories. The first workforce of the mills, the first factories, if you will, were young girls. Okay, the girls were anywhere usually between the ages of 16 to 25. This is an image, guys, of the Lowell mills. You notice the machines, or the power looms, as these were called, on the floor. Notice if you I mentioned gears, axles, and pulleys. Notice the machine is hooked up to a gear, and the axle will spin. It's all based upon that water wheel we spoke of earlier, and the finished product would be cloth. Okay, at least early on. Now the girls, could not just return home after their shift of work. So most of the girls stayed in boarding houses, pretty much two to three to a room, and they were called to the factory by bells, and oftentimes they would work up to 12 to 13 hours a day. So over the course of the 1800s, this develops over time. And in 1861, the Civil War begins. If you look here, guys, this is a map of the United States in 1860, the year prior. Notice that the manufacturing represented by these factories with smokestacks and the red rolls of cloth, which would be the textile mills where yarn was spun into cloth, are predominantly up north. The cotton plantations in the deep south fed the northern factories, and that's where that mass production took place. The end here, before we end, I just wanted to kind of show you where you're going to be going here in Schoology, May 7th and 8th. There are a couple of things that you're going to do. You're going to watch a PBS Mealtime video. It's a movie. It's pretty good. It goes back and forth between documentary and historic fiction, which is in the form of a cartoon. And there are some questions that are based upon the video. It gets in, like I said, the mills, the girls working, how it went from clothing being produced in the home, which is called the cottage industry, to mass production in those mills. And they're going to focus on the production of textiles or clothing. And then you have the mealtime questions. There's also an article, a Newsella article, based upon how industrialization changed the world back in the 1800s. And then there are some questions that go along with that article. So both the mealtime questions from the David McCully Mealtimes video and the questions that coincide with the article are to be submitted by Friday. All right. Have a good night, guys.